I'm Deb Dingus, Executive Director for United Way of Licking County, and I want to welcome all of you this morning for joining us for our monthly Community Partner Council Forum discussions. And I know we're kind of getting a few minutes late going this morning. There's something in the air, I'm not quite sure what it is, but folks are dragging lots of head colds and flus and all kinds of things happening this time of the year. Our Community Partner Council forums are put together by a committee, most of you know, a volunteer committee who meets and come up with the themes, the titles that seem to be an appropriate topic related to issues facing our community at large. And so today's theme or title is Culturally Aware Services. And that's a large bucket, a large topic for us to talk about today. So certainly this won't be an exhaustive discussion about all of those things that might fall underneath this larger topic. But we are really happy to have with us three individuals who are working deeply in this topic in their own arenas and who will share from their own experiences, perhaps personally and professionally, what this might look like for all of us as we also go about our work in the community and become sensitive and aware of services that could help with the diverse cultural populations that we are working with and encountering. So as we get started, I want to remind you there are some slips of paper on the table where you are welcome to write any questions down, and at the end we'll take those questions and we'll allow our panelists to participate in answering those questions together. Also, if you have ideas for future topics, things coming up, we already have 2025 planned, but giving you a heads up, we're looking at some extra forums that might be a little bit larger in scope in 2025 and looking at what that might mean in 26 as well. But if you have ideas that you think ought to be included for our committee to look at, please write those down there. Write down your information so that we can make sure that we're able to stay in touch with all of you as well. So with that being said, let's dive right in this morning. And as we get started, I'm going to have our panelists do an introduction of themselves. Just real quickly, we have Janine Leal, who is the Assistant Director of the Bhutanese Community of Central Ohio. We have Jhuma Acharya. Jhuma, am I pronouncing that right?
You're right.
Right, thank you. School Family Engagement DEI Specialist at Licking Heights Local School District, and Janine Watkins, who is the Vice President for People and Culture and Chief Human Resource Officers of Denison University. So we're very pleased to have them with us this morning, and I'll have them say, as we get started, a little bit more about who they are and about their role that they're playing in their organization that they're representing today. So we'll start down here at our end. Who's got the mic? Right there, Jenny, do you have the mic?
I guess
so
I
we'll
do.
start with you, Jenny. Go ahead.
Is this working?
You gotta flip the switch.
Where's the switch?
On the side here.
There you go. Should be on. Let me see here.
Test.
Oh, okay, thank you. Here we go. Technologically challenged today. Hi, everyone. Thanks for inviting us here today. This is a real honor to be able to speak with you. I'll try not to get too much feedback here.
Try that again.
Okay, is that better?
That's better.
Okay, thank you. So as she mentioned, my name is Jenny Leal, and I am the Assistant Director of the Bhutanese Community of Central Ohio. And in that role, I oversee the various programs of the organization. I work directly under our Executive Director, Sudarshan Packerel, who was unable to make it today, so I'm doing my best to fill in. And we have various programs that I oversee, including youth-focused programs where we're trying to reach the youth in the community, as well as agriculture, and emergency rental assistance and programs like that. So I kind of oversee the day-to-day operations and help us continue doing our work to serve the community.
Good morning. I just like to see if people are awake. So I have a disclaimer that I am allergic to the state of Ohio, I've learned, so please don't take any questions if I tear up, if I'm emotionally responding. I am emotional, I can't. Yet the majority of the tears that you see are truly because I'm just apparently allergic to the state. So with that, I am Janine Watkins. I am a really long title at Denison University. The reality of my role is I care about people and our culture and ensuring that our workplace creates an environment where everyone finds their place in their space. They feel that they have a place where they can be their authentic selves. And we do that through a variety of initiatives that include HR strategies. So whether it's benefits, the type of benefits we provide, the type of retirement plans that we provide to help people prepare for their futures, the compensation strategies and staying competitive within not only our market, but where the world is going, and just the fact that a carton of eggs not too long ago cost $5.88, right? And recognizing that I don't care who you are, unless you're the maker of the eggs, that could potentially impact your life. The way that we create environments for people to have safe and brave spaces, to have conversations that may be challenging or polarizing. So again, about creating a workplace and an environment where people feel that coming to Denison allows them an opportunity to be their best authentic selves, surrounded by others who think differently, who approach life differently. We can agree to disagree and still have a wonderful time together at dinner or at lunch or at brunch.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jhuma Acharya. I'm a former refugee from Bhutan. I always start my introduction this way so that I tell my authentic person who I am. I work at Viking High local schools. I'm a family engagement and DEI specialist for the district. I work with Ms. Tom, he's my boss. I can tell anything lie right here. It's recording there. Just kidding. So I oversee family engagement, connect families with the school, and educate community about what is the significance of engaging with the school. And I also help families about connecting with resources. So the school district has a hub which has a list of resources. We connect families. Not all families in our district speak one language. We have a very diverse population in the district. We are 5,500 student number wise, but we have 53 different languages spoken in the district. So we are very rapidly growing school district in Central Ohio. I also help a major making venture program, which is actually a program for homeless students, and oversee that program too. But on top of everything, I like to engage with the community and bring community to the school and make that connection with the school, because many of the community that we serve don't really know how to make that connection and do not have that experience of being connected with the school. So that is my role. I'm also a research student at Ohio State University. My research is focused on building that partnership with the communities and the school. So it really matches so well with what I do every day and what I study. And I'm so much honored to be here. I have a candy in my mouth to keep myself fresh. And I'm with people who are lifelong expert in speaking, so I have to hold my hesitation sometimes.
Thank you. We'll go on to our next question. So we can just pass the mic up and down. We'll just kind of take turns going up and down the table there. So our first question is, Jenny, when thinking about providing services to individuals from a wide variety of cultural backgrounds, what types of services come to mind, especially relating to the work you do?
I think that the types of services will really depend a lot on the people that are being served, and any organization or provider that is wondering what those should be can easily do, a needs assessment. Perhaps they need English language services, perhaps the elderly or employment need services. So there could be a wide variety of things that could fall under the types of services provided to different cultural backgrounds. So it's important that you know clientele and community that you're serving. For us, and I forgot to kind of explain that the Bhutanese community of Central Ohio, so we serve or Bhutanese refugees, which many of you are probably familiar with. It's a growing large population here in Licking County. And we are based in northern area of Columbus, where a lot of our population also lives, but we're doing a lot of work in Licking County as well. And so these are refugees that have been resettled over the last 20 years or so, and are moving to these areas. So for us, what we encounter the most in terms of service needs is mental health related. The majority of people that we encounter in our office are dealing with some form of mental health issue, and many people are trying to self-medicate in many ways through alcohol, substance use, and other forms. So that's a lot of what we encounter in terms of services, and that's an area that it is very important to be culturally aware of how treating people and how we're dealing with these issues. But that's what we encounter the most.
I like to go second, preferably third, so I can always go ditto, like everything is said. I'm gonna start anything. Don't take that as a cue that I don't need to start anything. One thing I will add from an employment perspective, when we think about how we care for people and how we care for our culture, one of the things that we've conducted at Denison, and it's something important for an employer to conduct regularly, is a needs assessment, specifically around your benefits. Ask your community what benefits matter and what's important to them. We conducted a study 2 years ago, and it was we got the results a month before I joined the university. I joined in the fall. And it was amazing to me that I walked in and one of the top 3 needs that our community shared with us was a desire for pet insurance. And it was really important to them to have pet insurance as a benefit or a perk offering for their life. Now, as a devout pet owner, I have a golden doodle and a shih tzu that, depending on the day of the week, they are up for adoption. Not this week, but last week would have been different. It was very interesting to our administration that was something that was really prominent and important to people. And I said, well, overall, while our benefits are deemed highly competitive for our industry and what we do, there's a need that people have that we're missing. So let's take a step back and think about what the pandemic referred to as the Great Resignation, right? We've all heard that term, the Great Resignation. People fled from their jobs. So I don't view it as a great resignation. I view it as a great recentering and a refocusing. People are recentering themselves. They're refocusing. They're rethinking what matters and what's important to them. And what's important isn't the same thing that it was in 2018 or early 2019. So people are more apt to leave an environment that they wouldn't have left before. They would have stayed at that job 40 years because we all know it's Deb, and that's how Deb is, and we just let Deb be who Deb is, right? We've all known those people, right? Just let Deb sit in the corner, be Deb, and leave her alone. And people recentered and they refocused. And what matters today is not the same thing. So it's important to regularly hear from your community, and then from that, understand how you can help them find resources, how you can help them understand where to go. I don't ever profess to my team or to our campus that I have every answer, because I don't. I'm one human, but what I am committed to doing is listening to you and being a partner right beside you to find the answer. So while I may not know where all of the community organizations are, by golly, there are 7 that I can talk about today, I can talk about a year ago. Because we take the time, we take the energy to remember that people are who surround us, not FTEs, not headcount, but humans who have human moments, human emotions, and all of that human needs to be cared for.
So, on the type of work that I do and working with different cultural background, families from different cultural background, what our service come to my mind is communication. I think communication is centerpiece. How do you connect with people is through your communication channels? How do you use that force in terms of making that connection? So how do we build that? How do you build that framework so that we can have that effective communication with each other? So my role as a family engagement person is more like communicating with families, not just that speak the language that I speak, but the families who do not speak the language that I speak. So we try to find that common language. How can we communicate each other? Unless and until we make that connection of speaking each other and understanding each other, it's very difficult to provide services, because we always talk about culturally responsive services, right? Where are they available? What kind of services are you talking about culturally responsive or culturally appropriate? So in order to give that access to people who really need the services, we need to connect with them. And the medium to connect with them is communication. How can we make it effective communication? And at the place where I work, the school district I work for, we have used different channels of communication. And recently we have been using a communication app called Talking Points, which has very huge influence in our school community. We have seen a very huge that people that are very eager to communicate with school through that app. So that is one way. So finding apps like this is one, but there's so many other things that we can do. How can we create that culturally responsive approach of reaching people and then connect them with the services is one thing that I always say. The other one is, I think when we talk about diverse community, we always see the deficit side of the community. We always look about the backdrop of the weaknesses in the community. We don't really look the strength of the community. We also try to look the strength of the community, try to bridge that strength, bring that capacity to the school and try to explore how can we work together with the families. And I think that establishment of partnership with organization, community-based organization has really helped a lot. And that's what I say the district is really making that approach in making that connection, because unless and until we know where our families coming from, what kind of community they're coming from, it's very difficult to provide appropriate services. The best way to find out that appropriateness is, I think, understanding them. So what we have done is we have done a lot of community work. Our school district leaders have gone out in the community, done a lot of neighborhood work, meeting families out in the community, trying to ask them what is best, in what best possible way school can support the families, because at the end of the day, we are not just teaching students, we are also providing service to our families. So how can we make that work? And as I said, partnering with local organizations that exist within the school district, within the school boundaries is very important, because these are the assets for us. Until and unless we partner with them, we make that connection with them, it's very difficult to achieve what we are planning to do, because all these families who are coming from different neighborhoods, they all have different needs because they are all from different backgrounds. The district serves around, as I said, the 53 different languages spoken by our families and students in our district. It's a very small school district, 35 square miles, hopefully, if I'm not wrong. And then within that, to find that 53 different linguistic group is a big thing, is an asset, is a capital to us. But how do we leverage that capital to make that use? That's what I say. The other one is providing culturally appropriate. So we keep talking about all the time, providing culturally appropriate services. What does actually that mean? Does that mean the culturally appropriate service for one community is alike in another community? Or do we really have to face out in a different way or seeing it through different lens? Maybe the need of one community is very much different than the need in another community. That's what I find every day in my job. I talk to our families who are in a Somali group. I also talk to families who are Nepali, who are Spanish speaking, well, other different groups, they all have different needs. So how do we meet the needs of this diverse community is another big challenge. But then we cannot just stay away saying that this is a challenge. How do we make that approach? So building that culturally responsive framework to connect with families and establish that relationship will be the best thing that we can do.
Thank you all. Thank you so much. Just hold that mic down there. Arthur, question will be, we know that diversity leads to stronger, more vibrant communities. As we expect our community to continue to become a more diverse place to live here in Licking County, what should be on our radar for future growth? What are the biggest gaps in culturally appropriate services that we should prioritize first?
Someone else want to go first? Okay.
This is my one.
Okay.
My background includes almost, we're not gonna talk about the number of years of experience in HR, and in that, I've worked in oil and gas, I've worked in higher ed for over 12 years, I worked in healthcare. Healthcare is a missing piece in our communities, and healthcare that speaks to and understands the vastness of cultural backgrounds, cultural acceptance, and what's appropriate in different cultures is truly missing. And educating our healthcare providers in a way that they understand how to approach the individual patient in that room as an individual. Again, not as a number, not as one of 25 people that they're going to see in the next 3 hours, but understanding the unique specific needs of that individual and their family. And that goes beyond, I mean, it evolves beyond what we even see on the surface. It evolves beyond when we're talking about communication. We also have to recognize that communication isn't always spoken. It is unspoken. It is the body language that individuals use. So really understanding how to approach an individual and meet them where they are in their space in healthcare is an area for me that is missing. So that is one of the biggest gaps that I continue to see. And the more rural areas become, or the further out you get in more rural areas, the further away you are from healthcare and from primary care. So the emergency room becomes a primary care doctor, and that is not the best way to treat and care for an individual. Our radar for the future has to focus on, to me, it's all centered at the core, and this is probably the 18th time I've said it, of caring for the human and getting back to that place in that space where we look across the table and we see humans who have needs, and we don't see, and everything else we see secondary, right? And it is focusing on the fact that we're just surrounded by humans that have basic life needs, that have Maslow's hierarchy basic life needs, and then how we address those needs based upon where they are financially, where they are in their heritage. Are we defining words the same way? Do we define culture the same way? Do we define diversity the same way? Those are the things we need to get back to the base root of, and that will make it much easier for us to care for others.
I can add to that. I think increasing that multilingual support services is very much needed, because as we strive to support multilingual families, like family from diverse background, and that is very important, because again, my centerpiece is communication. How do we communicate? Until and unless you communicate what you have, even if you have resource full of resource, you have a room full of resource, but that you don't know how to tell people this is here and you can get connected with that, it's not going to happen. It's going to stack there and stay there forever and ever, and it will make no use. It's just a wastage of resource. So how do we make that? So increasing that multilingual support services and is available, culturally appropriate services available. I know I'm a refugee myself. I have lived in this country for the last 12 years. Coming as a refugee and then getting connected to the service, even if you speak English, was challenging. I know people will, oh, you speak very good English, we need to learn it, but that is not the first need. My first need is how do I connect to the resource that's available. So we try to see that aspect of it. That is also important. I think the other thing I think whenever we talk about service providing, I think who is providing service, how much competent are they? I know nobody is competent in every culture, but how do we make our intentional effort to train ourselves, equip ourselves to know more about the culture of the community that we're serving? We may be serving a community who is densely populated with Nepali, but then maybe in the next part of the job, we may be serving a community that is very densely populated, and the speakers, and the linguistic group. So how do we train ourselves? How do we train our service providers in that aspect, in that spectrum, so that services are provided in the best possible way we think about? The gaps, I think I always see the lack of that culturally appropriate service. We keep talking about, we provide culturally appropriate mental health services. It's very difficult to see that aspect inside by inside. I myself being a service provider at some part of my life, I keep talking about we provide culturally appropriate services. What does that actually mean? Do I really intentionally mean, or I mean for the funding purpose? That is the huge gap that we see, because we have so many organizations that keep saying we provide culturally appropriate services, but they are mean on papers, but service not provided. They don't even provide interpreters for people who do not speak English. So those are the important things. I think at the end of the day, again, how do we communicate? How do we tell people this is what mental health is? How do we educate that? That's what I feel the gap exists.
Yeah, I think what Jhuma said. I think he said it very well. I think one, issue is when you have a small new community coming into a larger community, and this happens in Columbus as well, not just in a community like Licking County, sorry. But they're expected to learn and to adapt to the way things are done, which they don't know how things are done. And I think what's important, especially as the community continues to grow here, is that creating an understanding between both communities, so that people feel more comfortable, like, and welcome, that needs to go, from both sides. But like, for example, as Jhuma well knows, the most of the Bhutanese refugees resettled in places like Texas and Arizona and Georgia, but now they're all coming here to Central Ohio, and part of that is because they did not feel as settled or perhaps as welcome in the communities where they were living previously. So I think that's a need to keep up with as community continues to grow and to move into this area. And gaps, kind of like Jhuma said, like many providers think that all they need to do is translate something and then the service is provided for them, whereas the needs, might be a little different. For example, the way you deal with mental health, like, is not through talk therapy, in the Bhutanese community. So there's just little things that you need to know or understand in order to go beyond just language. And as Jhuma was saying, culturally appropriate, like, what does that mean? It's a lot more than language. Language is important, but it needs to be more than that. And we need to empower community leaders to be involved in knowing what those things are and addressing them.
Our next question is, what guidance do you have for service and providers working with individuals from a variety of backgrounds and cultures? What barriers might they anticipate, and how could they work through them? And you touched on that just briefly just a minute ago, but I guess if you could take a little bit deeper dive, can you give some specifics in those areas? And as you look at other individuals who are going to be providing services.
I guess for me, the advice I would give to any service provider is to be humble enough to say, I don't know, and ask for help. Getting beyond one's ego, one's level of education, one's level of knowledge and expertise. And while I may have worked in HR for 30 years, I am surprised every day by the things that come across my desk. And I am humble enough to recognize that I have an amazing team and we are successful because I hire people smarter than me and they know a lot more than I do. And that is a wonderful thing because then we create amazing avenues for those that are around us. And I hire people from amazing backgrounds and none of them are the same. And that's why our team delivers. And so being humble enough to say, I don't know. Being confident enough in knowing that I don't know, yet there's someone who does. And going to find that person or going to find that resource. The barriers that exist, I would also recommend to providers to also acknowledge and recognize that those barriers, as we've kind of broken record been saying, are going to be different, not only for each culture that you engage with, but each member of that culture. The life of an African-American family from Mississippi is very different than the life of an African-American family from New England. They have different experiences, they have different backgrounds, they have different communities, they may come from different socioeconomic statuses. So just because someone may appear on the outside to be similar in kind to someone from a same, again, how are we defining culture, they're still bringing something very unique to the table. So recognize that every individual that you approach, and the barrier that I would define that then is, stereotyping individuals into one category, into one lane. Because you're Bhutanese, therefore you are X. Walking into that with a space and a frame of reference of I'm walking into this room with this individual, and let me allow this individual to address for me what their needs are, what their challenges are, what their barriers.
I totally agree to that. And I think also my guidance is how do we invest time in gaining the trust of the community? And also, I think it's time for us to invest more time towards getting that trust. How do we develop that trust with people from diverse community and involve the community leaders in those conversations so that because this community organization, these community leaders are wealth of knowledge. They have experience from their cultural background. They know what things work, what things doesn't work. But many of them, what happens, these people are in a silo. They don't really get recognized. They don't really come to the table. They are not given a space on the table to come and talk and share. So having those spaces created for them, I think that's one advice I would give. That's one way we can include people, the guidance that we can include more people to the table. But also, how do we create opportunities for others? Like either it is in our hiring procedure. Jimmy said like so much, like sometimes you hire people who are far more smarter than you, but do we really recognize that part of it when you're hiring? Do we really consider that part? Or do we say, oh, because I was born and raised here, so I know better than this person? I will share one very short incident. I used to be a legal court interpreter for a couple of years before I joined Living High. There was an attorney, I will not name, but I'll not also name the court where it was. So this attorney speaks 3 words in Nepali, Namaste, Kasta hununcha, which means hello, how are you? And then this client who was supposed to get a Nepali interpreter, the attorney said, oh, I speak Nepali, I don't need an interpreter. See the sense of understanding. If you speak 3 words in Nepali and say you are competent in Nepali, how culturally appropriate service are you providing to them? This is the ignorance. This is a very big ignorance in our like I would not say American culture, but more people who feel that they are smarter. But sometimes we hire people who are far more smarter than that. And I absolutely agree. I think those are the people who work so hard and will bring so much changes, positive changes in the community. So that's what I think is hiring those people, trying to find opportunities for those people, creating opportunities, not finding, we have to create. Until and unless we create a space, it's very difficult for people to come and access. Otherwise, if you don't create a space, it's already occupied, right? So how do we create that space for people from diverse backgrounds so that this is an opportunity to learn, not just to provide service, but for the service providers to learn from the co-workers and provide the best that you can. Obviously, my biggest barrier is always I see language is one of the big barrier, but language comes in very different ways. There can be body language, there can be verbal language, there can be other different cultural languages that we talk about. Those are there, but there is also misunderstanding. The barrier is one of the biggest barrier I have seen with service providers, especially in healthcare and in some sort of education, is there is a misunderstanding of what actually that community means to them. The perspective, the perception that you have about a particular group of people from a particular background, the already mindset perception is very dangerous. And that creates a misunderstanding, that creates a mistrust. So for a person who already had that preset mindset, to get that out of his brain and add something else is very difficult. It's a very difficult thing in human life to change your perception. So how do we create that? How do we do that? That barrier exists. And to overcome that is, I think, again, how do we expose ourselves to others? How do we talk to other people who do not look like us, who do not speak the language that you speak? I think there are so many avenues that you can be a part of community celebration that you see in your neighborhood. There are different people doing different things. Not to speculate them, but then to learn, to inquire what things are happening. How can you be a part of that? That will to some extent eliminate some of the mistrust that you feel.
Thank you, thank you. What resources might be currently available that folks aren't aware of, such as culturally specific food pantries, translation services, religious communities, healthcare, et cetera, that we might not be aware of that we need to share with our larger community here?
We're really aware that, I believe that all the resources exist, but maybe they're not, the problem is more that they're not all culturally appropriate. I think so, but for example, many families don't even know that our organization exists. And so that does happen with the organizations that are serving the community. People are not aware of them. But I think that the bigger issue is access. People don't have the transportation, or they don't work during the hours when they can access things. In the Bhutanese community, there's also a hesitancy to ask for help. So people are not gonna necessarily come out to food pantries, and if they do, they're gonna take what's available. They're not gonna ask for anything else. And I think the food pantries also have a role in providing and making easily accessible, culturally appropriate foods and items like that. So, yeah, that's what I would say on it.
in my short 2 years here, I'll take this moment to be humble and say, I don't really know. Yet I'm available to partner with you. And let's take a journey and find out. I can share where there are food banks. I can share where there are food pantries for our students on campus, and the different events that we host to provide winter clothing for students that are on campus. Yet, to Jenny's point, I can't really address for you that this particular place understands the importance of a halal meal, and therefore they provide food in such a way, they prepare it in such a way that it supports, 100% what this culture needs. And that, again, one of a couple of questions is where we're deficient and can be better. And that is not only sharing the information, but maybe beginning to open some doors and creating something that doesn't exist today. So do we have services that we need to exist today? And as we're thinking philanthropically, where are we actually pulling our resources to provide spaces for these communities?
I can share what resources we have in our school district in terms of what we do in terms of providing support services to our families. Obviously, our translation and interpretation services are very well used in the district. We use different ways. We have Marty. We have in-person, like people like me. There are people who are bilinguals in the districts who can help. But other than that, we also have a food pantry in the school district, which is not very much common in the school district to have food pantry. We have a very well set up food pantry. We provide food to families who are in need. And again, it's culturally appropriate food. Once again, going back to what that culturally appropriate is, we ask families what kind of food do they need, and we try to pack things ready for them to come and pick it up. So that way, the food packet doesn't have something that goes to the trash when it goes to the home. Because we really care about the food that we collect comes from local donations, and we really value that so much in our district that because this is so much useful to our families, we want to make sure that this is used. It doesn't go to the trash. So sometimes when a family says, I need food, we try to ask them, what kind of food do you need? We have rice, we have lentils, we have halal meat, we have these things. So then they will pick up and we make sure these things are used in the time. That's one thing what we say. Another one we have in our school is the health center. The school has an inbuilt health center through a living memorial, and that has been a huge resource for our community. I think initially it was not much well known, but slowly it has done, the word message has gone out in the community. I think there are a lot of people who are now establishing the family care at our school clinic, which is one of the biggest sources I've seen. Not many schools have that kind of services. They partner with other organizations or other healthcare providers, but I think Living Heights has that. Living Heights Schools clinic is one of the biggest resources that I've seen. The other one, what I also say, I think the intentional listening capacity of the district leader is so important. Not because my boss is here and I have to speak all good things about the school district, it's because real I felt it. Say what you want to say. It's because at the end of the day, who are making these policies? Who are making this decision, right? The leaders. Do they really listen? Do they really care of the community? Yes. The way they did is last year we had a community meeting where many of our families said the food that provided in the school has a salad, a vegetarian salad, but has an egg. But in majority of Hindu community, egg is considered as non-vegetarian. So when our family said this to the superintendent and the food department, hey, you provide salad for a vegetarian, but this contains egg and fish. We don't consider those as vegetarian. We need a salad without an egg. They strictly changed that address the need of the community. So now when we meet, they're so happy to see. We asked about, did you see any changes after our last meeting? They're happy. Oh yeah, the food thing is changed. My son can eat his whole lunch there. Those things, is one small step. So when the people who are making this are really listening to the need of the community, that's important. That is one resource I see in the district. It is an inherited, probably a quality that is inside the district, but that is one I always see and feel the capacity of our leaders to listen to them and then make this adjustment according to the need of the community. The other thing also is, I think at our school district, what we do is we have a lot of other partners that work with our school. Like if it is about mental health service providers, we partner with other organizations that in school built resources are very useful, and that's what I find very useful in the district, and many of our families are using it. I I hope I covered what I wanted to say.
I'm gonna go off script just a little bit here. Jhuma, because you said multiple times you're listening to the need. And Jenny, you said, we're not gonna ask for certain things at the pantry. We're not gonna ask for those needs. So if you had to say to the larger Licking County community, here's the question we would like for you to ask us. What would that be? What do you want to be asked? Does that make sense?
Yes, let me restructure my thinking first.
Okay.
I think I will ask, even the question to be asked to the community.
What would you like the community to ask
Okay.
you about your needs?
I think trying to understand where they are. One thing I think I always talk, I'm a social worker by profession, but other part, I'm a social worker by my credential. But then I think to understand people where they are. If you are going to talk, if you wanted to know about a community, and the first and foremost thing I would say is try to understand where they are, what actually they feel, what actually do they believe, and then trying to see that how do we connect, how do we make that connection with each other. You know, I would feel very uncomfortable to come and talk to a group who really do not know what actually I bring to the table. So when you know that there is a diverse community, diverse families in the neighborhood, it's very important for us to know what actually that means to you. What value do you have? So try to understand what values that diversity has in your community is what I would ask. The value of the diversity to grow in a peaceful environment. I don't know if I just to the point where you're looking for.
It was a broad question, but again, if the community asked you, what do you need? How would you answer that? What
I would-
question would you like them to ask you?
I would hope the community would start with, hi Janine, tell me about you and help me understand your needs.
And I would say something similar. I think providers should know who they're serving, and when they know who they're serving, then they will understand their needs better. So if a pantry, has food needs or any culture coming in, find out, what they need, what they're looking for, and how it can help. And, I'll probably keep stressing, work with the community leaders. Community leaders understand the needs of the community, so involve them in the conversations and ask them questions. I'll just say that, ask what you need. What do you need? Ask.
What do you need?
Yeah.
Good, thank you so much.
And again, adding to that, sometimes when you ask, what do you need? I think there is a kind of, like if someone asks me if I'm new and if someone asks me, what do you need? I don't think I will have an answer because I have so many needs, right? If it is 10 years ago, you would ask me, what do you need, Jhuma? I would have the 2007 question that I can write up and give you, this is what I need. Because I'm very new to the country, because I don't know anything about life here. But then depending upon who are you asking, at what point of life are you talking to people? Like, are you talking to a group of people who are very recently arrived to the country? Are you talking to people who are already here for generations? Everybody has needs. Every community has a need. Either you are grown and raised here or you're very recent to the country. Everybody has need. But so what kind of need do you think the community have? To have that kind of understanding is also very important. So as I said, if you ask me now what my needs are, it's so much different than what my needs were 10 years ago.
So we also need to be open to that needs change, and once we think we have it figured out, oh gosh, we know what their needs are, we need to be open that changes constantly.
Exactly, yeah,
Well.
it changes over time. I mean, it keeps changing because my needs were 10 years ago are not the needs that I have today. I'm changed because I know to some extent that culture to my American culture, I know little more, and my needs, so many of my needs that I had once upon a time are subsidized, and they're subsided. Now I have other needs because it depends upon how, so it is a constant changing thing.
And I would add, as an employer, when we're thinking about the needs of those that we serve as an employer, depending upon how you count it and how everyone creates their graphs and charts today, there are 5 or 6 different generations in the workplace. Right, and so each one of those generations is coming into that, into that environment with a different need because of where they are in their life. And so you're meeting, to your point, you're meeting people where they are, and you're asking them in the moment where they are, tell me your need, recognizing 2 years from now, 5 years from now, or depending upon life circumstance, if my house burns down tomorrow, I have a very different need in 24 hours than I had today. And so what happens over the course of a person's life impacts that answer.
Right. That's a challenge, when we need to create an à la carte menu, right? In a world that wants us to go through the quick drive-through menu, one size fits all, right?
And
Whether
it
it's-
doesn't.
Right, it doesn't work.
It does not.
So as not-for-profits and as social service organizations who are sometimes lumped into certain funding streams, grant cycles and check the box, apply for this, how do we create and grow those opportunities that are culturally sensitive and changing and that meet the variety of a la carte needs that we truly have as humans?
I have a dream world that I live in. My team tells me all the time, I live on a purple cloud, that's my favorite color, and I
Yeah.
ride with purple unicorns across the sky, and I come up with all these ideas. And so one of my purple clouds with purple unicorns is a world where surveys that, and I'm not saying, I'm not here to argue whether surveys are necessary or not. Please don't tear the Bureau of Labor Statistics whether or not I think that the census is important or not. It's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is I would love for there to be a world one day where surveys no longer have check boxes, they're all open text fields.
Right.
And everyone then gets to enter the answer that meets their need, not the answer or box you're trying to fit me into, your point, Deb.
Right.
And then that allows social service agencies, nonprofits to see, now that I'm reviewing these 48 documents that were turned in, I've got 48 families or communities or people individually telling me, maybe we have enough to reach all of them, maybe we don't. But at least now I know the true need because I didn't force people into pick one of the categories that some external agency told you are the only categories that can exist.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point. A lot of times what the struggle that we have is that funding can be limiting. And there are often restrictions or certain requirements. So I think there's any way that funding can become more open or more available to the community leaders, to the trusted organizations. I think that, will help a lot if you're allowing the community leaders to do what they know, that they need to do. That can help a lot.
I think that's a shift, and again, going off script here, but as we look at philanthropic organizations who want to partner with local experts, and all of you are local experts in your own particular areas, that we look beyond those check the box opportunities to provide funding, and we trust organizations who have built trusting relationships with people and who have asked humans, tell us about who you are, what you need today, right? And so being nimble in our philanthropic opportunities and being willing to partner with people and having them help decide what's best for them. Because it's a direction that I think, a place we could start, certainly. And where we haven't been for many years when we look at charity organizations, philanthropic organizations who say, those people over there, they need this. Let's go out and collect money and give it to them so they can do this. And we have not asked them what it is, right?
Right.
So how do we continue in those kind of conversations in our Licking County climate and then the larger climate at large when we have to value humans at all of the tables and find ways that all humans can be a part of the tables, right?
Right.
Okay, sometimes I diverge too. So let me go on to the next question. 6, what is something then we as a community can do as Licking County residents to be more welcoming and accommodating to newer residents in our community that don't look like us, don't speak our language, have different customs, different cultural practices? how can we as individuals do something to be more welcoming and accommodating?
Well, I think, one thing you can do is hold events or information, places where people go and people trust, like the schools, for example. Majority of families are familiar with the schools, maybe it's kind of a safe place or a known place, so have more events, like have a Nepali Parents Day, or I don't know, whatever it is. Or even at, jobs and family services where people go frequently, or in places of employment, go to meet people where they are and where they're comfortable and where they are going to be, is primarily the thing I would say.
I would say be self-aware and don't be afraid of being uncomfortable. Don't be afraid of words that you may feel that have been turned into weaponized words that really aren't. They're just words that help us better understand who we are. So for example, I have an extreme bias towards Bounty paper towels. There's no better paper towel than Bounty paper towels. If you buy Brownie paper towels, you're not welcome in my house, because Bounty paper towels are the only paper towels that exist. That's my preference. That's what I choose. I believe they are truly the quicker picker upper. And yeah,
Getting sponsored.
I am. I should get sponsored for Bounty, because I do. I call it in the
I'll
grocery
just
store every time I go. I stand there with my Bounty paper towel like I'm in a dictionary. I've recognized about yourself things that may have influenced your opinion about different groups. And so walk into the room aware of who you are, aware of what you bring to the table, aware of things you're bringing to the table that may not be influenced by truth, that may be influenced by a ton of other factors, whether they're socioeconomic, they're familiar, they're the neighborhood you grew up in, the school you went to, or the first fight you got into with someone who looks like the person. Maybe it's the first boy that broke your heart that looks like a certain person, which is why I'll never again date a football player. I'm just saying it's not right, but understand who you are, understand what has influenced your life, and recognize that Jhuma's not that football player. Maybe he looks like him, but he's not that football player. And it was 40 years ago. I gotta get over it, right? Clearly I'm not, for the record. Clearly I'm not. I don't date football players anymore. Understand who you are. Understand what has influenced your life. If you're not aware, you have a trusted friend, you have someone that is your best friend at work, your best friend in life, your closest family member. Talk it out, talk it through. Don't assume that everyone you interact with absolutely is what you see on TV or on YouTube or on TikTok or all those other places. That 12-second snapshot in time, those 44 characters do not define an entire culture and entire people.
So don't make assumptions, is what you're saying.
Do not.
Exactly. I would go-
Except about football players.
I wish I can be a football player, but I know nothing about football, so. I would say, I will add something to what Jenny said. I think holding cultural event at the place of work, like schools are beautiful place to hold this cultural event, but no, I think these are so much streamlined only in the school, but also at the place of work. I know, I can share, I have a friend of mine who works for a local manufacturer where they celebrate the Diwali. You know, this is so used for the employer because they have a tons of Nepali families to celebrate Diwali. And then last Diwali, they hosted an event there, and like, it is not a matter of providing meal to them, but it's more like recognizing them, their presence. So I think the important thing is recognize who is there, recognize their presence. When you feel that somebody is there who is a little different than you, and try to make that connection rather than seeing the differences, looking at the similarities. That is very important. I think culture connects everyone so tightly. So how can we do that? That is one. The other thing is also, again, creating that network of people who are like-minded, who really understand what that is. I think if you want to create a space for people to be open and to be, supportive of each other, is that network you create among each other, right? So that is what I feel is very important. And again, for me, I think as a non-English speaker person, being born, raised in a very different culture, understanding, teaching people about their culture. Like, I know a neighbor, like, this is another funny story. I live not very far from the place where I work. In 2016, when I bought the house and I moved there, my neighbor got so mad at me the very first day. I was moving in my stuff and I happened to drop a box of utensils when I was unloading the truck. And my neighbor was with her little kiddo at the parking lot. That was the very first interaction with me. She got so mad at me for dropping that box of utensils so loudly. It was not my intention. I would not break my utensils. My wife will kill me, right? It costs a lot of money to buy. But then she looked at me and said, "Can you do it slowly? I'm so scared of you." That was the very first interaction with my neighbor. And then I thought, oh my gosh, this is where I'm going to live the rest of my life. And this is my neighbor. But my perception was bad. I was totally wrong with my perception. There was something triggering her because of the sound probably she was very upset. But I know her then after day by day, I get to know her very closely and we became so good friends. And she was so supportive of us. Anytime we were out of house, if we happened to lock the garage, she would just text me, "Jhuma, you forgot to close your garage door. Where is the key? Do you want me to close it or can you come back?" Or sometimes she would just go mow my grass. And then we became so friends. But my perception the very first day was, oh, this lady is tough. I will have a rough life here. So that sense of understanding, sometimes situations are created, like, it is different. You have to understand. So that is important. Even at the workplace, that's very important. Because maybe the very first interaction is different. You might see a person in a very different cultural costume first day, and you might think, oh, this is the uniqueness I want to see in my workplace. No, it may be just situation. Today is a cultural day, our culture, something maybe very much to that person who wore that dress. Maybe tomorrow he will come back in a different dress. But then looking at the dress, you cannot just presume, oh, because they have this kind of turbans on the head, they may be this group of people. You should be aware, we should be scared of them. So that perception has to go away. And how do we do that? Is learning about culture. Where do we learn? I think unless and until we start going out of our soft space and then try to get ourselves exposed to others, there's no way of learning. You can learn about culture by staying inside your house. You have to go out in the neighborhood, see what exists there, how can you be a part of that? And again, when it comes to the service provider, how do we make welcoming is, how do we train our staff on what different types of cultures, different types of communities that we have in our, like when United Way provides services to people, or like any service provider provides service to the communities, we really have to understand their background. And how do we do that is no one person is perfect in every culture. How do we invite those people to the table then? Try to find out the cultural community-based organization that exists in the community, partner with them, because these are the cultural capital for you to utilize them. They may be your interpreter tomorrow, they may be your employee tomorrow. And also involve those community members, community leaders to your table while making decision. And ask them, hey, what is the best way we can approach? This is what we wanted to do, but how can we approach this in your community? Until and unless you hesitate to ask, you are not going to learn anything. And that is how we make the space better for everybody. Again, creating that space for people that we want to provide service is very important.
Thank you, thank you. Before we start collecting some questions from all of you, I'd like to just give you all one more chance, kind of just say something in general about any final thoughts or comments, stories you'd like to share as it relates this morning.
2 years ago, I entered Licking County for the first time after 21 years when I left the Ohio area and I went west and I spent 10 years in Indiana and 10 years in Texas. I'm still not sure why I came back to the snow from Texas, but that's another story. And during my 2 days of interview, I walked out of my hotel and I strolled down Main Street to get a feel for the area. And it was a beautiful evening. I had learned about Wits custard, and so I was really excited to go try this Wits right after the knowledge. I was like, this is the place to go. And two couples walked towards me. And one couple was maybe 5 feet in front of the other. And the first couple, they were both talking to their partners. And the first couple, they're both holding hands. And the first couple looked up and saw me and their eyes got really big and they ran across the street. Mm-hmm. And I thought, I could take that 1,000 different ways. I don't know how to take that. is there a bear behind me? Maybe I should turn around. I'm not sure what caused this couple to run across the street when they looked up and made eye contact with me. And as I had 1,000 thoughts in less than 1,000th of a second, the second couple walked to me and said, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. And I said, well, thoughts 1 through 12 were probably accurate, and I don't need to go down the road to the other thoughts. And so as a woman of color, it was disturbing to me thinking, is this where I want to set down roots? Do I want to stay here? Should I keep interviewing? And what made me go back and finish interviewing and why I'm here 2 years later is the second couple existed. The second couple was present. The second couple made a difference. Because had there been silence after that moment, I would have just been left with my 1,000 thoughts and trying to figure it all out for myself. Allyship is difficult. It is hard. It can be scary, yet you never know what it actually means to be an ally. And in that moment, for me, that couple felt like an ally. And I thought, okay, right now we're 50-50. We're failing, but we're 50-50 and we can go up from here.
Thank you. So I'll just say that, like, probably even as we speak now, there are more of our community members who are moving into Licking County. It's rapidly growing, and I think different from other immigrant refugee groups, the Bhutanese are coming from a rural culture, and they really like this area of perhaps more spacious or more open to them than the crowded areas in Columbus where they've been living. So just want to be more aware, more appreciative. We're hoping BCCO's, our office is hoping to be able to set up an office in Licking County at some point. I think that would, even more people would move here because many of them don't want to move from the area where we are because they want to be close to our services. So we're hoping that that will be something that can happen in the future. But in the meantime, I'm sure population will continue to grow and they'll continue to feel welcome here.
I want to share one very short story that my life experience ever, the way we see United States as an immigrant. When I first came in 2011, I came in January 3rd of 2011, and I was resettled in Rhode Island, a Providence city in Rhode Island. And I knew then that that was the heaviest snowfall that the state has received ever. And I came from the place where there was no snow, but general understanding, when you say you're coming from Nepal, everybody expect you have been to Mount Everest, you have touched the snow, you have reached the feet of those mountains, right? Not everybody lives in Mount Everest. People live at all different places there. So the very first time seeing snow, feet and feet of snow, I could hardly see the roof of our apartment. And then the next day, my case manager took me to apply for Social Security card. On the way, we were stopped in a red light. And there are two white old ladies who were standing at the side of the street light holding help, homeless, please help. And that always attracts me every time. My perception of coming to United States before us, America is a very rich country. Indeed it is, right? The safest place in the world to live in. I don't know how that would be, but that is what I thought. And then if you ask me today, I might have a different answer for that. But then to see white American ladies holding that placard saying, I'm homeless, please help, changed my whole narrative of what I see America as. And every day I struggle, no place is a perfect place for you. It's the way you adapt, right? So then I asked my case manager, very simple, like, what is this? And oh, these are homeless. And I said, America has homeless? Oh yeah, you will see them everywhere tomorrow. It's just first day, you'll see it more. And I saw that every day. I see that every day. And every crossroad, you'll find people holding that placard and saying, help me. So again, I don't want to say that all the people coming are of same background, but people have life circumstances where you become homeless, right? That is a situation. So I think this narrative, the perception I have before coming to the United States and seeing those two ladies the very next day changed my whole attitude of what I think about things. How do I see world? How do I see? Same with the family that I work with. I worked for refugee resettlement for 11 years. I work with refugees every day. I went to the airport, picked them up, brought them to their apartment, and I told them my very story to them. Hey, this is what my personal story is. Because everybody is overwhelmed to be in new space. I bet you all will be, if you go with me to Nepal, and I will have you stay in a very remote part of Nepal for one whole day and then come back and ask you, how was the day? You'll say terrible, right? But these people are coming for the rest of their life. We don't want to make the rest of their life terrible. So how can we be there? How can we support them? How can we help them? And until and unless you ask them how to be supportive, is very difficult. And so many times people will not open and say, I need this kind of help. It's a matter of understanding. So my way of seeing how, in my work as a refugee case manager before coming to my school role, I usually used to help families, especially with school enrollment and getting connected with school. And that is how I end up getting to my PhD program for that particular focus of my study, and then the job that I do. I think it's a matter of making that connection between like, how did I see before and how I see now? And then the way as a service provider, how did you used to do with the people with so much of your cultural background, and how do you see the people that are working today? Because your workspace probably have changed a lot. 10 years ago, you didn't see these people, but now you see this influx of very new community, right? How do you get yourself adapted to that? And again, we go back to how do we get ourselves exposed to getting out of our comfort zone, trying to learn something from others will always allow you to learn the skills. I'll stop here.
Thank you, thank you. A lot of humility, a lot of coming to a situation, being willing to listen, not making assumptions, being open to there's more than just this first perception, and realizing that this moment too will change and I need to continue to adapt. Our community is changing. Our community is growing. Our community diverse populations will be growing, we know, and that is exciting. That is tremendous. As we look for ways as Licking County community to continually be welcoming and open to growing and to understanding and receiving new ways of thinking and being and valuing the unique strengths that different cultures bring to us. This will be our work together. And it's a work that we need to commit ourselves to and to continually remind ourselves every day. It's one day at a time. How can I be welcoming to another person who is in front of me as an individual? So with that, I'm going to open up our conversation this morning to all of you, and we'll go around and collect those slips of paper. Just raise your hands if we haven't gotten your question yet. We'll come around and get those. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, and again, any of you can answer. This question is, other than language technologies, do you use technology and media? Do you use documentaries? Do you use other forms of technology? I think what we're getting at, to help in educating folks or to help provide services. Are there resources?
I can chip in a little bit, and maybe our friends can add to it. I think at our school we use different apps that is used in different ways. So talking points is one that we have been using. We have found it very useful because it's called talking points. So this will allow two-way communication. It's more like in most of the apps are one way, so you just send a message. but the talking points can help you to translate back in the language you prefer. So using those kind of resources are very helpful because we have found our families responding back to the teachers. It's a software where you can speak Nepali, but the teacher, if teacher prefer the language is speak English, that teacher can listen in English. So I can type in Nepali, but then Mitch will get everything in English. So that is one resource that we've used and is so wonderfully useful. But in terms of others, we are also doing a lot of other things in terms of community conversation, having that conversation, having an interpreter in person for our meetings are very useful. But sometimes it is not as efficient as if you speak the language, right? If you speak the language first class, right? But if you don't speak the language, then what we having interpreter in conversation is always important. But sometimes when we do to an interpreter, I being an interpreter professional before, there's always something missing in between. The information get lost in the way when it passes from an interpreter to person. So we do mostly our lately used program is our talking points has been very useful, and we have explored another service that is also useful because we are working on it. I know we are in a very preliminary phase, and we also use Marty. So digitally these are there, but in-person interpreters are also very much used in our schools. We also have started doing some sort of exposure to different culture through our arts. And so the district has been doing a lot of art exhibition from different background, from different perspectives. So we have used, I don't know how many of you are familiar with, there is a program called Columbus Crossing Border. This was a group of artists who grew together back in 2016 and started a project which is called Columbus Crossing Border, where a group of artists will paint the portrait of one person and then create a story of that person, the immigration story of that person. So that has been, we have been sharing this. We have art exhibition in our schools. We also have the documentary. I think it has a huge impact in our students to understand what actually it means, what actually art means, but also what actually culture means in that. Because these artists in this documentaries are talking about their culture. They're also talking about their struggle, but also teaching what the way of how the struggles led to the life. Like how do you move from one struggle to another struggle. So these are different ways we have been using the schools. So, but technologically, yes, talking point has been very widely used in our district, and this year it has been fabulously working. So we are so fortunate to have that. And I'm always grateful to Tom for who brought the program to the school.
I'll echo the importance of, again, the human touch in person. So we use services like Deaf Services Incorporated when we're having larger group events, and we have members of our team that speak their language of communication is ASL, and so we'll have interpreters on site to ensure that everyone's hearing the message and they're hearing it consistently and the same. We use Language Line. Primarily I used it when I was in healthcare, and it is again you can phone in. And when you're using telehealth services as well, because the interpreter can be both on screen or on the phone. And so when a provider is talking with a patient or the patient's family, the interpreter's right there and they're able to either be on screen or not. From an AI perspective, when we're thinking about technology, I don't know about you all, but Zoom has made amazing strides since the pandemic, right? And we've kind of realized that you can, turn on multiple languages in Zoom. And so depending upon your audience, and then the individual user can tailor the closed captions to their needs. And so ensuring that we have closed captions on for all of our audiences. And again, Zoom has made great strides to ensure that what it's actually translating are the words you're saying, because for some reason, whenever I say welcome to HR, it interprets Star Wars is here or something like that, back in 2018. But really getting engaged with AI and things that may have been scary before, like ChatGPT, and how can we utilize these services. They really have come a long way and are absolutely amazing at being able to help bridge that gap of communication to ensure that people are able to fundamentally walk away hearing the same message and not leave some things to interpretation.
Yeah, for us, we don't really use a lot of technology in our work. Most primarily is done person to person through our programs. We do the primary way that we share information is actually through our Facebook page, which is we put on videos in Nepali about different topics, and it get a lot of views because some of the population is also not literate even in Nepali. So we have to find ways to communicate with people, but a lot of the times we really have to gather people in person if we really, want to communicate something. So that's what we do mostly.
Okay. We need to figure out ways to connect with people all kinds of different ways, but I am so impressed with the translator. I feel like, I'm a big Star Trekkie, so like we're moving closer to that universal translator. So very happy about that.
Another thing, another important thing is sometimes when we say providing translation or interpret translation, we think that when we translate thing in a like written format and pass it to the recipient is enough, but that's not enough. Many of our diverse community are not literate in their own language, so that has to be always kept in mind. When you even provide that, like you cannot just have a pamphlet translated in Nepali saying that you provide every service in Nepali, because I may not be able to read that Nepali, right? I might not have that literacy level. So that is very special consideration we have to make when we work with diverse population. You can translate everything in Swahili, but how about that person who speaks Swahili cannot read Swahili?
Another question is, do you know of any services or resources to assist the developmentally disabled population in these different cultures?
That's a good question.
I know National Children's Hospital has resources for that, because I used to support, there was an autism clinic up at the Worthing side where I used to provide one of the staff was a friend of mine, and I went and did a lot of cultural presentation to them. So there is especially Children's Hospital has those programs that supports people with multiple disability in different culture, because they have hired staff who knows more about culture, and those are there, but I don't really know these other resources that they have.
My frame of reference is from Texas, and so it might be beneficial in Ohio, but it's now a notepad written down to help to learn, because my answer is I don't know. Yet in Texas, we worked closely with our county health department because they were connected very closely to an organization. They referred us to DDS, which specifically focuses on developmental disabilities. And we were able to build a connection or a bridge that way. So we started with our county health department, and they were able to help us weave through. So it might be an option or a resource, a way to get started, is starting with the county health department and seeing where they can help guide you.
I don't really have anything to add.
Okay. All right.
I think the Franklin County and Licking County has Board of Developmental Disability, and they
Yes.
do provide services.
Yes.
I know.
Yeah, we're sitting over here, so.
Yeah.
Hi, we can talk after this.
Yeah.
But when you were talking about, the population growing into Lincoln County, we do have a lot of kiddos and stuff that we're working with, and, just kind of having that good communication with the family. And I work specifically with independent providers, and I do have some that, we have families who want their family member to be a provider. So just trying to have that good communication, getting them to understand the different policies, regulations that they have to follow. So a lot of it is the communication piece.
Is there a way that DD could get connected to the community center and start to begin the relationship?
Yeah.
That way, I would suggest.
Sure.
We do have a relationship with you guys, and we have worked
Okay.
with the schools, so
Okay.
I think we're gonna keep doing more and more and more.
Okay, great.
Good.
Okay, our next question is, are there any trainings available for those wanting to learn more about the Bhutanese community and culture? Are there any trainings coming up?
I will defer to you.
Should ask you, Jhuma.
I'm not aware of any coming up. I know that, that my boss, Sudarshan, he does go speak to groups on request. If there's a particular group that would like to have them come speak, or someone from the community come to share about the Bhutanese community, we can definitely work with anyone to figure that out.
And he's an amazing presenter. We've had him come and talk to our staff.
Yeah.
It's been a little while, but he's
Yeah.
really, really good.
Yeah, he is.
What I'll just say, I don't have an answer at all, thank you. But what I love about that question is a constant reminder of how, in my very humble opinion, at the age I am, which is 29 forever, we're so microwave ready, we're so technology ready. The ability to just walk over to a new person's house and say, welcome to the neighborhood is almost a lost art. And so the ability to just see a human and begin to build a relationship, start a conversation is so scary today. When I talk to people, they're so terrified of saying the wrong thing. They're so terrified of offending someone. We limit our ability to learn about others because I'm just so afraid of saying the wrong thing and really making someone upset. Other than, getting to what I truly believe will happen, which is a zombie apocalypse. So I'm looking for like 50 acres to wall off like in Walking Dead. Technology is an amazing thing, but it should not replace human connection.
Right. It is 11:30. I want to ask out there in general, are there some other questions, things we would like to share with our panelists this morning? Yeah.
I just wanted to ask a very specific question about, you had spoke to Zoom and to, what was the app? Talking points. Did you say, I don't know if I heard you say it or not, that those have been better for you at this point than an actual interpreter?
Which one of us? Jhuma?
Janine. So talking points especially is a purchase software that you can use. It's a little different than Zoom. So it is, in talking points, you don't see each other. Like in Zoom, you see each other, right?
I'm imagining you use talking points, like if we're sitting here having a meeting, like we can talk and do that. But what I'm getting at, the reason I'm asking is because a lot of times when I will schedule a meeting and I schedule an interpreter, that interpreter doesn't, like you were saying, always speak the same language, dialect, whatnot. And I get very confused as the person holding the meeting is what's, and I'm not even sure that the information I need is getting out there clearly.
Yeah, and
it would be easier to use like one of those apps.
so talking points is more like message based. You can say the text message, it's a text message based. But in terms of using an interpreter, I will also say to be cautious is that sometimes when you use an interpreter, the interpreter uses a language that is of high standard, and the people do not really speak that language at the community level. So if you are say you have an interpreter and then that doesn't really resonate, you see your client is not getting enough, I think you really need to understand if the interpreter is correct to them, if they really are understanding. Because many times I have seen that the interpreters, they speak very high standard language, and that is not the language spoken in the community. It's very different. And then I also have experienced sometimes there's a Nepali family and there was an Arabic interpreter.
Oh, okay.
Yes, this was in one of my interpreter assignment I was provided to. The family is a Nepali family. There is an Arabic speaker interpreter. So that is the biggest barrier that we see. Sometimes the agency will just say interpreter. Interpreter do not speak 29 different languages. They speak one or two, right?
Yeah,
So that has to be very much understood. So there was an interpreter. So this was in my previous work. So I had a family that I was working with when I was with my previous job. And this social worker came with an interpreter. The family is a French speaker. They came with a Swahili interpreter. The Swahili interpreter do not speak French. I know they are close connected, right? We look at the geography, but we don't really look at the culture. And the French started bonjour, and now my family has nothing to respond. And this is how sometimes service provider fail to acknowledge what actually is the language. When you say, do you need an interpreter in your requisite form? You say yes, and it doesn't specify language, you can go with an interpreter. It's not your fault, right? And the same thing in Nepali community, many times the service provider will come with an interpreter, but the interpreter either use a very high standard Nepali and is not understood by community speakers. Like it is not the exact same level of standard that is spoken in the community. So that is why sometimes families will not really understand, and there is a negative impact of that. They make decision roughly based on what the interpreter is saying, but not what the client is saying.
Right, and that's exactly kind of my, like, I was just kind of, because number one, those meetings are typically really long because I'm having to go over and over. And then you're dealing with systems that are also
Yeah.
very convoluted, right? And trying to explain those to families. And then sometimes when that interpreter is not understanding.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I have been in those situations. I have been an interpreter like that too. So yeah, sometimes they will try to bring an interpreter from very different cultural background, even if they speak in like the language, and then there is a missing link between that.
Right. So, and we do always ask, like, what language interpreter do you need?
Mhm.
Yeah. So I haven't had where it's been a completely different language before.
It's not a makeup story, it's real. There was a Swahili interpreter for my French
Well, then
speaking
you just
family.
can't have it, right?
Because when you say you came from Senegal, then you say, oh, French is the language spoken. Interpreter, everybody was taking call for an interpreter request, just put a request for French speaker.
Yeah, no,
Well, I want to certainly thank all of our presenters this morning and our panelists. Thank you for sharing your experiences and your wisdom.
If you don't mind, I have one small comments to make. Sometimes we generalize people in terms of what language they speak or where do they come from, but we really generalize in a way it becomes a stereotype. One very common example I'll say, oh, these are Napoleon family. For Nepali community, they call Napoleon family. It's not Napoleon. Like the terms that we use sometimes is very, very frightening. A Somalian family. There is no word Somalian. They're Somali. But we don't really care about that, like Afghan and Afghani. You know, they're two different things. Afghan is currency, Afghani is currency, Afghans are people. But how much do we really understand when we use these terms interculturally? We make our own word, like English speakers make Nepali family as Napoleon. There is no Napoleon family. If Napoleon Bonaparte is a different story then, but there's no Napoleon family. There is no Somalian family. It's Somali. So trying to use an appropriate word when we use that, otherwise people will ignore to have an interpreter. That's where you come to a point that I don't need an interpreter. These people, they don't even know what Somalian is. What Somalian is. We are not Somalian, we're Somalis. Or say with Nepali. Or when you say, when you look like Indian or you speak Hindi, no, I don't speak Hindi. I look like Indian. But look and language is so different. You may look very white, but may speak very nice Kurdish language.
Alejandra, here's something. I am an immigrant too. I was born and raised in Mexico, and I can tell you, I've made people mad when I said I don't like spicy food. And in my professional life, I am thinking right now, when I'm providing a service, the impulse, first of all, we have the tyranny of the moment. So we need to act. However, we have a tendency to prescribe in the moment. And what I'm hearing you say and what's confirming in what my experience says also is sit down and observe for a moment and be patient and not follow your assumptions right away. So I appreciate your work immensely. Thank you.
It makes me think about a story I tell mentees as they're preparing for the workforce and they're ready to interview. And my mentor shared it with me, and the first CEO I ever met shared with me, when you're at an interview and it's a meal-based interview, don't season your food before you taste it. Because the interviewer may assume that you make rash decisions without all the information. You haven't tasted your food yet. You don't know if it needs salt and pepper. You're assuming it needs salt and pepper, but you don't know because you don't factually have any information. Yes, there are times when I just have to make a decision right now. For the majority of the time, we should take a step back. We should observe, taste the potatoes, cut off a little bit of chicken, eat a little bit of the beef, make sure it needs salt and pepper before you start.
I like that story.
Thank you, guys.
Anything else? Anybody else? Okay, again, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'd be remiss also again to say a special thank you to our gold sponsors too this morning. We appreciate Owens and Dennison and Lincoln Memorial Health Systems for continuing to support our community partner conversations. These are important discussions, and hope that you'll be able to take some of these nuggets with you, these stories, this wisdom with you as you go back to your own places of work, communities, and continue to look for ways to embrace and welcome and support diverse cultures in your own communities. So again, thank you panelists for being here today. Next month will be that special, what is it, Corey? What are we calling next month? It's
I think the topic is coping through the holidays. We'll have some self-care activities going on, some ways to help us de-stress during what can be a very stressful time.